build.net.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. It's Thursday, my favorite day of the week. I'm Ross. Thanks for starting your day with me. Producer Shannon says I need to aim the camera up a little bit. Did you say we're on YouTube? All right, if you go to youtube.com and type in my name, Ross Kaminsky, you will be able to see me right now. You see me in a blue shirt with some stripes going across it. That's me right now. We do need to talk at least for a minute about what's been leading the news on both left-leaning and right-leaning news outlets for most of the last 24 hours. I'll go to CBSNews.com for a typical kind of headline. Biden to announce executive actions to curb gun violence. There are a few things going on here. I don't have all the details in front of me of exactly what Biden's going to do. I don't know if anybody actually knows. But there are a couple things that certainly they're talking about. One is this thing that they call ghost guns, which to the extent that it's a problem hasn't been in the news very much. To the extent that it's a problem, it's probably in sort of the ongoing gang member versus gang member shootings in Chicago and stuff like that. You don't really hear about so-called ghost guns, but what ghost guns are, they can be a few different things, but the most common thing is somebody buying parts, substantially completed, but not fully completed parts of guns, and these parts are essentially pieces of metal that have been shaped into the parts you need for a gun and don't have serial numbers on them because they're not guns, they're just metal, and then people can do whatever they need to do to finish the rest of the part and put it together into a gun, and they call that a ghost gun. To me, it sounds like a fun project, and maybe I should try one before they become illegal. You'll always be able to get them. Look, this is the thing with these gun laws, and we'll talk about a couple more here in a second. They're not going to do anything. They're simply not going to do, and they are targeted, if you will pardon the intentional pun, they are targeted primarily in the wrong places. Almost all killings with guns in this country, whether you are talking about crimes against others or suicide, are committed with pistols. And every once in a while, terrible mass murder happens when some lunatic picks up usually a rifle, but they're very, very rare. And the vast majority of people who own, well, guns in general, are law-abiding folks who would never think about hurting anyone who didn't try to hurt them first. And I think the main thing to keep in mind is that most of this anti-gun stuff is proposed by people who don't own guns, have never owned a gun, don't know anything about guns, start shivering when they see a gun, don't understand the historical purpose of having a firearm in the United States of America, which, by the way, is not primarily hunting. The constitutional purpose of owning a gun is so that the people would have some way to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Now, I'm not saying that in the 21st century that's a fight that the people could win, although if you're a good enough shot, I guess, you'd be able to make a difference if something came to that. But I also want to make something very clear. I don't think the revolution is coming, and I don't think that people are going to be in some kind of mass uprising against their own government. But I do think the principle is important, a principle that should extend beyond the Second Amendment and beyond firearms, that when we're in a situation where the people are significantly afraid of the government, and the government isn't afraid at all of the people, then government is going to stomp all over the people. And that is why It's certainly true, an argument that you hear from Second Amendment supporters all the time, an accurate argument, that dictators take early steps in their dictatorships to disarm the population. They want to make sure there will be no resistance. And again, I realize to a lot of people the idea of armed resistance against government sounds ridiculous for a variety of reasons. But even though I think there probably won't be large-scale armed resistance against a tyrannical government in this country, I also think it's important that such a thing is at least is more than theoretically possible. I'd also point out, by the way, if we got to that position where there was a really large, like civil war against the government, basically, I actually think very, very large numbers of members of the military and law enforcement would side with the people and not with the government. That would be my guess. Because remember, in this country, and there's a very important purpose for this, in this country, when folks take an oath of office, and I'm talking about every member of the military and law enforcement and politicians, although they don't care about their oaths, that oath is to our Constitution. It's actually not to the government. It's certainly not to the president or any other particular politician. It is to our Constitution. And as much as it doesn't seem like it, when we look at today's politicians, and especially today's Democrats, but a few Republicans too, they seem to... You'd be forgiven for forgetting that that's what the oath is for, or that there's an oath at all. The way so many of these people behave, they act as if their oath is to their own power, or to their political party, or to Joe Biden, or to Donald Trump, and it's not to any of those things. And lots of Americans understand that in their hearts, in our hearts. There will also likely be a move by Joe Biden to ban, or actually I shouldn't say ban, I should say reclassify a particular kind of weapon that is called an AR pistol, and it is the kind of weapon that was used in Boulder. I am unaware of that kind of weapon having been used in another mass shooting. It's not very different from an AR-15 rifle. It has a shorter barrel, because it's just a definitional thing, right? Pistol versus rifle is just a question of barrel length. I want to say the threshold is 12 inches. If I'm wrong on that, somebody please let me know. But you have a slightly shorter barrel, and then they put on it a brace, a shoulder brace, rather than an actual gun stock. And it turns this thing that, based on just the barrel length, would be a pistol. Under the law as it stands now, it gets reclassified as a rifle, which makes it a lot easier to buy. So it looks like Biden is going to try to get these AR pistols to be reclassified as a short-barreled rifle, which is something that requires you to go through a long and expensive process to get permission for. I've actually done this a time or two, where I've had to go through what they call the NFA Act process. Often it takes at least 6 months and $200 to get approval, and you have to do it for each one. Even to the point of, if I bought 2 guns that required, or let's say a gun and a suppressor, and how about this for timing? In the next hour of the show, around 7:05 today, our guest is going to be a guy named Dave Matheny, who is the CEO and founder of Silencer Shop, the biggest online seller of suppressors and related items, and I've been a customer of theirs as well. When you buy these things, suppressors, short-barreled rifles, you have to go through this process. And like I said, it's $200 every time. the history of it is kind of interesting. Maybe we'll talk about it with Matheny. That $200 has been the same since the 1940s or 30s or whenever this was originally put into place, because originally it applied to machine guns, and it was basically designed as a way to make it so expensive for ordinary people to buy certain kinds of guns that they just wouldn't buy them. These days, if you're buying a $1,200 gun, it's probably... The difference between buying it and not is probably not the extra $200 fee. That's an annoyance, and waiting 6 months or whatever for the permission is an annoyance. And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help the country. It doesn't make anything safer. Reclassifying AR pistols, which are not really small, they're just, smaller than AR rifles, so that they have to go through this process, isn't going to do anything. Do you think the lunatic who shot up the Table Mesa King Supers would have been deterred if he had to go through that particular process for the particular gun that he bought? Don't you think then maybe he just would have bought a different gun? Why not? All of this stuff is designed to make people who are ignorant about guns feel better. None of it will make a difference. Most of the reporters who write about it also have no idea what they're writing about, no idea what they're talking about, and tend to accept all of the Democrats and anti-gun activists' rhetoric. And so it is very difficult to find, at least in what we call the mainstream media, any honest reporting on these things. Anyway, we expect to get a lot more detail today and action by Joe Biden on these things. Some of them will require the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to issue a new rule. That might take a little bit of time. The other thing that's worth noting, BATF has not had a Senate-confirmed permanent administrator since 2015, I think. And Joe Biden is going to nominate a guy named David Chipman, who used to be a special agent at ATF, and then he became policy director for a group called Giffords. It's an anti-gun organization founded by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was wounded in 2011 where an unbalanced lunatic tried to kill her. By the way, that didn't seem to be politically motivated, and the guy wasn't conservative or a Republican, just in case, because that's always where the conversation seems to want to go. Anyway, we'll just keep an eye on this stuff. We'll see what comes next. But be sure of one thing: nothing that the Biden administration does is going to make any difference when it comes to gun crime. Oh, I didn't finish my sentence on Chipman. Because Chipman has in recent years been such an anti-gun person, it's not entirely sure that he'll get approved in the Senate to run ATF. We'll see. All right, a couple other things that I want to mention. I saw on the news yesterday. I guess I'll go to 9news.com for this, although the news is in a lot of places. Face masks no longer required outside in 5 metro Denver counties. Boulder County was the first to lift mask usage while outdoors. Adams, Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson counties followed suit earlier this week. As of April 2nd, 27.3% of Jefferson County residents were fully vaccinated, and another 18.3% partially vaccinated. So that's over 45% right there. That's good. According to the amended Jeffco public health order, people age 11 and older have to wear a mask that covers the nose and mouth in indoor public spaces where 6 feet of distancing from non-household members can't be maintained. and they have to wear a mask while using public transportation, but they no longer need to wear a mask outdoors. Yeah, outdoors. And I would just like to say, I never was. Now, I'm not, like, bragging about that. I just, first of all, I never knew it was part of an order that I had to wear a mask outdoors. And second, if there's an order that you have to wear a mask outdoors, that's a stupid order. There's no evidence of transmission outdoors. There are more studies coming out about how sunlight seems to degrade COVID-19 even faster than we thought. And yeah, so I never knew that there was an order that you had to wear a mask outdoors, but apparently there was one, and at least in these big counties around Denver, you don't have to do it anymore. But if you're like me, you didn't even know. So, but I thought I'd mention it to you anyway. Oh, so here's a little bit of news. It's a little bit frustrating for me. You might have a different experience. A little bit frustrating for me to have been trying to navigate the system to get a COVID vaccine appointment. As far as I can tell, there is two different styles of ways to get appointments. There are some systems, like, for example, Kaiser, which is giving vaccines to people who are not Kaiser members, the University of Colorado Health System, and other places like that, where you sign up and they have you in a database, and then when you can get an appointment, they contact you, and then you put your name down, and then you schedule the appointment. And then there are other things, like the supermarket chains and the pharmacy chains, where you just have to keep checking over and over, and like check every day. Are there any appointments open? And just keep checking over and over. There's no, as far as I can tell, no central place that you can put your name down, and then your name gets distributed to all these places, and then whoever has a vaccine would call you. So it means, just for example, this morning, I'm trying to get my wife set up, so I had to go to Kaiser website, make sure she's set up for that alert, then University of Colorado, and then I check, like, King Soopers as its own website, Safeway its own, Walmart, Walgreens, and you could do more, but just this morning I went to 6 different websites, and I don't know whether there is a good answer. I don't know whether it would have been logistically possible to create a centralized sort of place where you sign up that distributes your information to multiple places. I have no idea. I wish there had been, because this takes a long time, and it's kind of frustrating. That said, a while back, not that long ago, maybe 10 days ago, I put my name in all these places, and a few days ago, I got a notification from Kaiser that they could get me in, and tomorrow I am going to get vaccinated. I don't know which vaccine it will be. I've asked for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because I would like just one shot, but I'll take whatever I can get. I asked for it on a Friday so that if I don't feel great afterwards, I have the weekend to recover. But whatever happens, I'll tell you about it on a Monday. We'll be right back.
KHOW Denver, 630 KHOW, an iHeartRadio station.